Good afternoon. My name is Ben, and I want to welcome you to the first installment of the PROLIM Lunch Bytes series. This series is designed to briefly explore capabilities within Solid Edge that are often overlooked or could use a guided intro to ease the process of adoption. Future sessions will be delivered every other Thursday at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. We want our Lunch Bytes to be valuable to you, so please let us hear your suggestions on topics we should cover. Today's topic is rendering. There are plenty of uses for rendering. Here's a couple of main ones. Customer presentations, marketing. You can use the rendered images in sales literature or place pictures up on your website. A basic rundown of how rendering works. First, you create your model. That model is then broken down into smaller triangles, and vectors are calculated for each of those triangles that are drawn on the model. Then vectors are compared with the light sources that you place in your rendering. The shading is determined between the angles of the vectors. The more triangles there are on your model, the higher the quality of image you'll get. A quick workflow of what we'll be showing you today. First, we'll show you how to apply material. Next, we'll add a scenery and adjust that scenery. We'll also add some lighting effects and foreground, and also show you how to increase your image quality and some other fun rendering modes that you can play around with. So first, a quick overview of advanced rendering. Advanced rendering is an extension of the Explode Render Animate application. This function can enhance the quality of images used in documents, such as customer presentations or marketing. Advanced rendering contains predefined archives. There's a library of materials, backgrounds, render modes, and light studios. To apply these, you simply drag and drop them from the predefined archives and drop them onto the model where they become session entities. Session entities are stored in your Solid Edge model. You can modify, rename, and delete these. You can customize predefined archives with your own entities, but you cannot edit, delete, or modify the contents of the original library. To get into the rendering environment, you just simply go to the Tools tab and click on ERA. And to render your image, click the Scene button. And that'll render your image for you. Now with our model, our front plate is blue color. That was applied to the part in the assembly mode as a face style. Now any face style applied to the model will show up under the Materials tab under your Sessions entities. As you can see, we have blue here already. To edit this, we can right-click and say Edit Definition, and we can click on Color and change it. And we can change it to match the rest of the grinder. And you can see in the preview window that's updated. And when we render this, it will update to the cayenne color. As you can see, we have a nice cayenne color, but if you go back out of the rendering mode, it'll still be blue because under our face styles, that is applied as blue still. We can also come over here and rename our material simply by right-clicking and say Rename, and rename it to Cayenne. Now if we want to apply some materials, we can go over to our predefined archives, expand our library, and we can apply different backgrounds, lighting studios, materials, or scenery. So we're going to apply a scenery to our model. We can expand the scenery branch. You can apply circular bases, room, square bases, and all of these you can edit and apply your own images if you want. We can go here. We're going to apply a tiled floor, so you just have to drag and drop it in. Now if we render this area, this is easier than using the complete render button because this only renders that small area, not the entire screen, so it does go faster. And here you can see our tiles are kind of big. So we can go in, we can edit that and make our tiles smaller and adjust the orientation of them as well. So we can go back over to our session entities, go to expand our scene, right-click on our base and edit definition. And we go to the Configuration tab. We can adjust the X, Y, and Z axis to make our tiles bigger or smaller. So we'll make those a little smaller. We can also rotate them or offset it. So we can offset it left or right if we want. When your model was placed into the assembly, if it was not at the origin, you can also adjust the Z-axis if you want the scenery to be closer or further away from your model. We'll go ahead and leave the model right on the scenery. You can also rotate the scenery around the Z-axis if you want a different orientation. So we'll go ahead and apply that. We can also change the color of the tile. The default color here of this tile is white, but we can right-click on it and go Edit Definition and change the color. We can define a custom color if we want. So we can go ahead, we'll make it a gray color, hit OK, and you can see in our preview it applied our gray color to the tile. So we can go ahead and hit OK on that. And one other thing we're going to apply is a background to our image. So we can come up here and go to the background. Now under backgrounds, we have a couple options. There's a couple default graduated backgrounds, and all of these you can edit and use your own color if you'd like. You can add an image or just a plain color. We're going to go no background. That just leaves a black background. So if we render area here, you'll see our black background and our gray tiles that we change the size on them and orientation. A couple other features in rendering is you can apply certain kinds of lighting. You can change the color of the lighting. You can adjust the brightness of it. There's all kinds of options. So we'll go back over to our session entities and expand our lighting studio. And the default with this rendering was ambient light and two distant lights. So we'll go in, we'll change one of these. So we'll right-click on this distant light and say Edit Definition. And there's all kinds of options here. There's shadow quality, resolution. I'll get into that a little later. First, we'll go and change this from a distant light. You can change it to the sun, projector, spotlight. We're going to go with the spotlight for this example. Next, we can go over to the placement, and you can see where the light is placed and how the spotlight will look on your model. You can adjust the cone angle if you want a wider spotlight or a narrower spot. The blue dot is where the actual spotlight is. So you can go ahead and adjust this from a top, right, and left view. You can also increase the intensity of the light so you can see it better. So we'll just move this around a little until we get it on our model how we want it. So that looks good. We'll go ahead and hit OK. One thing we can do with our foreground settings is we can right-click on the foreground and say Edit Definition, and we can apply different kinds of shaders to it. We can do a snow effect. You can adjust how big the flakes look. You can apply fog. What we're going to do for this example is apply a scattering medium. We'll go back over to our spotlight real quick and edit that definition, and we have to make sure we turn on the scattering option down here in the settings. So we'll hit OK on that. We'll go back to our scattering medium and start increasing the density of that scattering medium, and you'll start to see in our preview it looks somewhat like dust in the spotlight. So we'll come over here and do a full rendering. You'll be able to see the dust effect, which is one of my personal favorites to apply. You could change the color of the light. You could make it look more natural, like sunlight coming through a window. You can do all kinds of cool effects with this scattering medium. One other thing you want to do when rendering an image is when you first start out, you want the quality to be low so the rendering will go faster. Once you apply all your materials, you want to go ahead and increase the sharpness of your model To do that, you want to go over to the View tab and click the drop-down arrow next to Sharpen and increase that around 4 or 5. To see what this does, we can zoom in on the front wheel of the grinder here, and you can see that the edge of this is not very round. There are a lot of flat edges around it. So if we go under Sharpen and we increase this to 4, you can see now that the edge of that is a lot rounder. Another thing we can do, we can apply a perspective to the actual grinders. To do that, we click on the View button here, go to Perspective, and we can apply a different perspective to it. You can do Portrait, Normal, or Wide. So we'll go ahead and hit OK, and you can see now we have a little perspective to it. Real quick here, we'll just apply a couple other materials to our grinder. So we can go over to the Materials tab. We'll go Metals. You got aluminum, brass, copper, all different kinds of metals, and you can edit and make your own metals as well. We'll go ahead and apply a polished aluminum metal to the front part of the grinder. To the switch on top, we'll apply just a dull red plastic. Just drag and drop it onto the part. And for this front piece, we'll use a brushed bronze. So once you have these applied, you can go ahead and hit Scene again and see your rendering. With all of these materials, you can adjust the reflectivity of it, how shiny it is, if you want it to be dull or real shiny. You can also adjust the colors any way you'd like it. But again, you can't change the materials that came with the library. You can edit them and save your own, but you can't edit the original ones from the library. There are a couple other rendering modes that you can use. We've been using a photorealistic mode. A couple other modes. Let me lower the quality here so our renders will go faster. A couple other modes we can do. We can right-click on this photorealistic of Edit Definition, and we can change it to all kinds of things, from a cartoon look to hand-drawn, oil painting. There are all kinds of things to do, and each one of these options you can edit and make your own as well. We're going to go ahead and apply a hand-drawn setting here. We'll adjust the line width a little bit, make it a little thicker. We'll also adjust the curliness, make that a little higher. Now, this pencil lead is black, so we'll have to go in and change our background from black to a lighter color. We'll go with a gray color here, and we'll let this render. There's a couple other options you can do to increase the sharpness of your model. If you go to your View tab again in your View setting, you can turn on the Anti-Aliasing tab. You can increase that level to be higher. And what that does, it reduces or removes jagged display of angular edges. This, as well as the sharpness setting, the higher you make them, the slower your rendering will be. So you want to wait until the end before you apply any of these settings. So you can see you get a nice hand-drawn image. So if you want something more artistic, not so photorealistic, you can go ahead and apply one of these. These are pretty fun to play around with. Now, if you want to, let's say, do an exploded view of your model, you can go ahead, do your exploded view first, and then you can render the exploded view. So you go ahead and do your explode. Select your parts that you want to explode. And once you get your exploded view here, we'll go back to photorealistic. And you can render this. So now you can also render your exploded view. So you can play around with that. You can place multiple assemblies into the rendering mode. You can have one of your models exploded. You can have another one completely assembled. A quick example here we have. We'll close on this. We'll open up another example real quick. So with this, if we do a rendering of this, this is what this looks like. It's first rendering, nothing applied, no materials, no background or scenery. So if we go back and apply just a few quick things to it, we can make it look a lot better. So if we go in and apply a material to the base, and we also do a background, so we'll do no background. We'll do a material. We'll go down to rocks and minerals, granite, and apply green diamond. And then scenery, we'll just do that tiled floor again and add just a little perspective. And if we do this and render it, you can see how much better this will look than the original part file. So you can see adding just a couple materials and a little perspective to your drawing, how much more realistic you can make it look. So here's the general rendering workflow that you've got. The first thing you want to do is give yourself a goal. What's your purpose? Are you going to use this rendering for marketing, for a website? Are you going to show it to your customers so they get an idea of the product that you're making? And then it's always a good idea to create a copy of your assembly. Save it off in a separate folder just in case. You never know what might happen. So the first thing you want to do then in your rendering is set up your scene. Decide if you want to show or hide certain parts, if you want an exploded view or not, and position your assemblies how you want them. And if you have any certain views that you like of your model, go ahead and save those and make sure you keep them. Then you want to go through and start looking through the different materials. Start looking at all the different kinds of metals or rocks or minerals and get an idea of what you might want to use on your model. And also look at the library of light, a bunch of predefined light settings that you can use so you don't always have to create your own. See what kind of materials you might want to apply to it, what would look best if you want something shiny or reflective or not. And then before you start adding things, lower your quality settings. Turn off the anti-aliasing, lower your shadow quality just so that your renders will be quicker. So once you lower your settings, you want to go ahead and set up your background and then set up your materials, just basic materials, so all the different parts. Just drag and drop from the library onto them. You can go back and edit them later and how shiny you want them to be and everything. And then go ahead and figure out what kind of lighting you want and apply that as well. Like I said, then go back and fine-tune your materials. Start adjusting the colors of them. You can adjust the different colors. You can adjust how reflective the chrome is. And then always make sure to save your work. Then you have to decide if you want perspective added to your model. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I believe it's always helpful though to add a perspective to it. And start fine-tuning your view. Fine-tune the exact placement of your model and how you want to look at it. And then you want to ask yourself if you want a foreground, if you want to use that scattering medium in some of your lights, or if you want the snow effect, or you can add fog. Once you get this all figured out, you want to go ahead and increase your rendering quality. You can go ahead and increase your sharpness. You can increase the anti-aliasing, put that back up on high, increase your shadow quality. And you also want to decide if you want it to be photorealistic or an artistic image. If you created any custom materials or views, make sure to save those since you might want to use them again in the future. And remember to save your assembly as well. Here's a few quick examples. You can apply labels to your part, all kinds of different shadows and backgrounds. In the top left, you can see they took the draft view and then put the part on top of the draft, so it looks like the part's sitting on the draft on a table, which is pretty cool. You can apply an image to be reflected in any shiny surfaces. And you can also have a water texture, so it looks like the boat sitting in some water, which is cool. Here's a few more. So I want to thank you for your time. I hope you found this session informative. Please email us your suggestions for future Lunch Bytes. We appreciate your business and want to deliver additional value to you whenever we can. As always, if you have any issues you're working on, please don't hesitate to contact the technical team for support. We're here to help you. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and email me. As always, you can contact our technical support. Once again, I want to thank you for your time.